Hi guys, welcome to Creative Making. I'm Pete, and in this remastered video I'm going to show you the entire process of making a flat silicone prosthetic. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a base to work on. Just a bit of white board here, gives you a really good surface. I've got my sculpting tools, my clay of choice, some lighter fluid, a fancy pencil, a selection of brushes, a bit of reticulated sponge, and we're about ready to start. So this is the image that I'm using for reference on this. It's pretty grisly, but it's really important to work from reference. I found this on the internet. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch it out onto the board. I don't normally do this, but I'm just doing this as a kind of visual for you guys. I'm not trying to be super accurate here. I'm just getting a feel for that original wound. And let's start sculpting. So I'm going to start off by creating lots of these little clay worms, and I'm going to work my way around the outside of that wound. This is kind of the initial stages. This is kind of blocking things out and mapping things out, so I know where I want to go. Once I've got that shape that I'm happy with, I'm just going to quickly plug a load of silicone around it and start to block it all out, just to get the shape. I'm being really careful here not to be too thick on the prosthetic. It's an additive process. We don't want to make it look too thick and chunky. So this piece will be glued onto my kneecap. So when it comes to texturing, you might notice when we get there, I'm quite heavy with it. But before that, I want to make sure the whole surface is being worked so there's no tool marks in there. So here I'm just going around the edges, I'm just tearing the skin up a little bit. To start the refining process, I'm going to use this pan scrubbing sponge. So I'm just tearing it so we've got a rough edge there, and I'm going to soak it in some lighter fluid. Lighter fluid will dissolve the surface of this clay quite rapidly. Another thing I like to do before I do any sculpting actually is to make up a slurry. So for that I'm just going to use lots of little pieces of clay. I'm going to throw some lighter fluid in it, and I'll leave that to one side. So onto the texture. As I mentioned, this is pretty rough texture, but it's going onto my kneecap, and my knees are like elephant skin. I'm using all kinds of tools here, texture rollers, wrinkle tools. I will do a video which is a bit more involved in this stage. Alright, so this is that slurry. It's had time to dissolve. I'm just going to use my paint mixer to make that into a creamy consistency. I'm going to apply it with a sponge. But I'm also using that for the gore on the inside of the wound. You get a real nice organic feel if you use this for your gore. And the final thing I'm going to do, as I always like to do, is I'm going to spatter some of this all over the surface. This spattering gives that final layer of texture, and it really heightens the realism of the piece. I'm just finishing off with a little bit more slurry, a bit more gore, just trying to get it all looking very cool. So I need to clean up the board now. I'm getting ready to mould this. Just give it a good clean, and I'm going to use this clay extruder to make the flashing. For that I'm just going to make some little strips of clay, and then I'm going to use this to create a flashing border. The flashing's there for multiple reasons. The main one really is so you can handle the prosthetic a lot easier. Just make sure this is all neat and tidy and clean around the edges. The next process is to wall this up and make the mould. For that I'm going to need a sharp knife, some blades, a ruler and some foam core. I'm just going to cut some strips of foam core. My ruler just happens to be the right width. You don't really need these walls to be too high, as long as it's a couple of centimetres higher than the highest point of the sculpture. The next thing to do is to cut little strips in the back, not all the way through, but part of the way through, and what that does, as you can see, it helps me bend the foam core. Alright, so the distance there, probably about a centimetre or so. I don't normally draw this on, this is just so you guys can see what I'm doing. So there we go. So that kind of shows you the importance of the size of the board you work on and whereabouts on the board you put your piece. You don't want it right close to the edge there. So to glue the foam core walls on, as you can see, I'm just using some hot glue, and that little piece there I'm using is just to make sure that the distance is correct all the way around. This may seem like a lot of work, but actually it helps you save silicone, and let's face it, silicone's not cheap. So once it's all glued down, I seal it with more hot glue and we're ready with the silicone. So for this I'm using Moldstar 30, it's a platinum silicone, 2-part 30 Shore A. Make sure you do stir both parts really well. Give those a good pre-mix. And then we're going to weigh those out. Equal parts A and B. Give it a good thorough mix. We're almost ready. So for this I'm using my level table. If you don't have one of these or you haven't made one, then just make sure the surface you're working on is level. And as you can see here, I'm pouring in one point and I'm letting the silicone flow around the piece. That just helps any bubbles being pushed out. So we'll leave that overnight. And there we go, nice and set. Okay, so we break off the wall and carefully peel that off. And if you've done your job right, the mould should come off and leave the prosthetic on the board. Which in this case it did. Excellent. So the next thing we need to do is just to give this a general tidy up. So we need to cut off all of that flashing, all those little bits and bobs. It's not just an aesthetic thing, it can cause issues when you're cap plasticking, so make sure you clean all those off. Just a sharp knife. Cut this little bit off as well here so it sits flat on your surface. Finally, just use a pair of sharp nail scissors and just trim all those little bits off there. So just give it a clean up with some isopropyl alcohol and a chip brush, and then we're ready for mixing up our flesh coloured silicone. So for this, I'm going to use EcoFlex gel and some silicone pigments. You can see this stuff is super clear, which makes it great for this type of stuff. And it's also super soft as well. So to do this, I'm starting off with a little bit of white. And then into that white, I'm going to put the tiniest bit of, oh no, got some on the desk. Just be really careful of that. Tiniest bit of flesh colour. Tiny bit of red just to warm it up a little bit. I'm going to pop some flocks in as well. A bit of blue. A bit of green. A little bit more red pigment there. You see the difference from when we started. So this dot on the stick is not an exact science, but it kind of represents the veins in your wrist. And if they look similar, then the pigment is nice and translucent, just right for human skin. Alrighty, before we put the silicone in, we need to put some cat plastic in this. So the cat plastic I'm using for this is cue balls from Smooth On. Normally I would airbrush this, but in this instance my airbrush compressor, everything was broken, so I've decided that I'm going to paint this in. So I'm still going to dilute it a little bit with some acetone, but not too much, because I want this to be a brushable liquid. So here's a bit that I prepared earlier, as they say, and I'm just using a soft chisel brush. This is not an ideal situation. Ideally you want to airbrush this, but this thing is the only thing that works. It's got a small cup. The compressor part is absolutely useless. This one is a bit more hefty, bigger cup, nice trigger there, but as I mentioned, my compressor did not work. So yeah, so I ended up painting it in. So I'm going to go in with several thin layers. Now you've got to be really careful doing this, because if you're brushing it in, the first layer goes in fine, but the second layer can start to re-dissolve the first layer. So you've got to be super careful when doing this. I'm just drying those off with a hairdryer. If you've got time, it's probably better to let this naturally dry, but a hairdryer will be fine if you're stuck for time. So I'm building up lots of layers of that. I think I remember doing maybe 5 layers or 6 layers. Let's have a look at this EcoFlex gel. So this is a 2-part platinum silicone. The shore hardness on this is 00035. It's super soft silicone, makes it perfect for these types of things. The only problem is it takes 2 hours to fully cure, which for me, that's a little bit too slow. So you can use PlaqueCat. So PlaqueCat is an accelerator. Just put a few % in there. Read the technical bulletin, it speeds it up, and this is the stuff. Look how clear that is, it's incredible. It's really sticky when it's cured, and it's really stretchy. That clarity has always got me thinking about potential cool projects you could do with it. So it's really soft, sticky, it's perfect for prosthetics. Okay, so back with a level board then, and we're ready for casting this piece out. The mould is ready, the cat plastic is ready. Just to check the thickness of that cat plastic, you can use a little pin, and if you just pick up a little bit of the cat plastic with the pin on the side there, if you've got that smooth bubble without any holes in, you're good to go. If you've got holes in, you probably just need to do a few more layers, but that's looking pretty good. I'm going to weigh the silicone out. As I mentioned, it's equal parts A and B. I'm going to give that a thorough mix. And And then to add that, I'm just going to pour that all in. And then I'm just going to use a bit of board and a ruler there just to smear it all out. Now at this point you want to just go around the edges with a cotton bud, clean up any excess silicone. So that silicone's cured, and before we demold it we want to put another couple of layers of cap plastic on the back, so that makes it fully encapsulated, but also it means you can use Prosthetic to glue it on instead of using expensive Telesis or any of those other silicone adhesives. I think I did 3 layers on this. Okay, so time to demold it. That's all dry. For this I'm going to use a bit of talcum powder. You can use translucent powder, in fact that's probably better, but talcum powder is fine, and this is just to stop it sticking to itself. So again, if we've done our job right on this should peel out of the mould without any problems really. But if it feels like it's sticking in there, a bit of talcum powder will also help. So lifting it up around the edges, peeling it all out. And did it work? It certainly did. Looking great. So we've got a really nice prosthetic there. Good thickness of cap plastic. It's all squashy. So the first thing I want to do with this, always with these types of things, is to again trim it all up, tidy it all up. Should probably tidy my workbench up as well. Just using a nice pair of sharp scissors. It's really great if you can get into this habit, and then to store these you can actually pin these onto a bit of foam core if you're not going to use them straight away. And there we go, ready to stick on. So here we go, let's stick this piece on. So for this I'm just using some derma-tac from Smooth On, and there's a bit of glue on the back of the piece and on the knee. Once that's all glued down nice and tight, see I just snipped the flashing there, and just with a bit of acetone I'm just dissolving that flashing off. And then just using some alcohol activated makeup and the reference picture, I'm just going to start colouring that up. One thing I will say when you're applying wounds like this, try not to oversaturate with blood. You spent a lot of time working on this, you want it to look as good as possible. When I start applying blood on this, I'm very careful not to cover the wound too much. Okay, so we're pretty much towards the end now. The blood on this I think looks a lot better than if you were to saturate the whole thing. It makes it look a bit more realistic and a bit more visceral. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned some things, and if you've got any more questions then please pop them in the comments below. I will get back to you. Just leaves me to say thanks very much for watching this video. If you've got to this point then well done. While you're here, why don't you give me a subscribe and a like, share this video, and thanks very much everybody. I shall see you in the next one.